I jumped into a project that I was grossly underqualified for. How did you decide what degree to pursue? Like, I'm always fascinated because there's usually either family or parents or social pressure to go do something.
Yeah.
Walk me through, because honestly, looking at the school and what you studied relative to where you are, any part of the career, it seems like a how did that happen?
How'd that happen? Yeah. So the first degree was in medical technology because, going back to what I said about losing my brother, I really, had a fascination for healthcare and said, "I'd like to come in and really do something." And then once I got into it, understand, I mean, that's a pretty high pressure position. I mean, when you're in a trauma center or whatever, and it was very, if you mess up a type and cross match or some sort of antibody screen or whatever, you can basically kill someone. So it was a lot of pressure, and I was 19 years old when I got that first degree, so it was a lot of pressure for someone like that. But uh, um, but I loved it, and what I would but then as I started to get involved in other aspects of the healthcare, I realized that I really enjoyed the business and financial side much more. And I jumped into a project that I was grossly underqualified for. That seems to be a trend. And so jumped into that project. It was reshaping the hospital that I was working with, because I had a clinical background, and they wanted me to sit on a committee because healthcare was changing. Right? It used to be in the Medicare world, it was cost plus. Whatever your costs were, you mark it up. That's where you got paid. And then it changed to what's called RBRVS, which is basically a regional based value system. And then it was, what are your cost structures? And then we're going to normalize it. And so you saw a lot of hospitals starting to tank, and because they weren't financially prepared. And so I found that really fascinating because I'll never forget. So quick story. I was they called them administrators back in the day, and the CEO of the hospital, we had just laid off a bunch of people. And so I said to the CEO, I saw him in the cafeteria. He said, "How you doing?" And I said, "Well, okay, but kind of a little worried." I said, "I lost a couple of my colleagues today," and I said, "Our beds are full. The OR is busy. The lab's busy. What's going on?" And he said, "Well, we're losing money." And I was like, "Well," and so kind of, whatever I said. Well, look, I said, I think I've got a few ideas. And he said, "Really?" And I said, "Well, yeah." I said, "We're ordering all these duplicate tests, and I don't know if we get paid for them. And I'm seeing this, and I'm seeing this." And I started, and then he sat down and had lunch with me, which I was really nervous. And so bottom line is when he started talking about it, he said, "I'd like you to sit on this committee." And we went out and built what's called an RCE, a relative cost estimation system. And we really reshaped the hospital, and we started to operate profitably again because we knew our cost structures, and then we better negotiated reimbursement. And then I was like, "Oh," then the light bulbs go off, and I said, "Well, I could do this." And I enjoyed this much more than I did sitting in a laboratory. And so then I went back and got the accounting degree and the master's and all that other stuff. And so because I said, well, if I'm going to play in that arena, then I really need to have the educational background to pull it off. So I was, running a blood bank 11 at night till 7 in the morning, then going to school from 8 to 5 every day, and got through it. So